What is going on with Bitcoin? Today, I'd like to talk about what is going on with Bitcoin and whether or not we are at the top as some people are claiming. But before we continue, I'd like to ask you to smash that subscribe button because every day I make a video giving you daily updates of what is happening within the crypto market. And I not only just look at Bitcoin, but I also look at meme coins and many top moving coins. That being said, let's get back into the video. So, what's going on with Bitcoin? Let's look at this in three ways. First, the past, second, the present, and third, the future. Starting with the first one, the past. What has Bitcoin been doing in the past? So, Bitcoin hit a giant pump in November, like many coins did, and it shot all the way up to $106,000, where it had a nice pullback and then went and placed a higher low and now is trying to make a lower low. Looking at the present, Bitcoin just went down from 102,000 to 94,000 and is currently going down. Now, let's look at the future of what possibly could happen. Many people suspect that Bitcoin is over because there is influencers talking. There are tons of influencers and tons of YouTubers, tons of TikTokers, tons of Instagram Reels, tons of people online are talking about Bitcoin and how it's going to be this great investment. And oftentimes that is a sign of the top of the market. Now, I will say with that just because something happened in the past does not mean it will happen in the future. What I mean by this is many people are saying, oh, in the past, looking at the previous all-time highs, Bitcoin, many people started talking about Bitcoin and tons of businesses talked about Bitcoin, and then that was the top of the market and it dumped. And then we hit this long range where we were kind of in a down at $15,000. Then we slowly started going up. Well, one thing I'd like to say is that the top of the market back then was right around $60,000. It was the high 60s. Now we are at $106,000 is the all-time high. So yes, obviously Bitcoin is going to have more popularity during this bull run than during the last bull run, especially because people who bought during the last bull run are now online flaunting their wealth, or not even if they're flaunting it, because that's not necessarily a bad thing, but even showing off and telling their friends and families how they got wealthy. Of course, there's going to be more people interested in Bitcoin now, especially since it's been going up and up and up. So, is this a sign of the top that more people are talking about Bitcoin? I would say maybe. Now, it's not a yes and it's not a no. As I said before, the reason it's not a yes definite sign of the top is because we got to take into the fact that people have made significant gains on Bitcoin because it's up over about $40,000 from the previous all-time high. Now that is very significant for any coin, let alone Bitcoin. And it recently broke that $100,000 mark and then went on to $106,000. So Bitcoin is still having an amazing run. Now, do we need to be cautious? Yes, we do. When everybody is buying Bitcoin, the ones who have been in it from the beginning, not even from the beginning, from November, even from December, those are the people who start to sell because they're seeing the crazy gains they are getting. So third, let's look at the future. What can Bitcoin do in the future? Well, one thing that is slightly concerning is that Bitcoin has created a higher low. Now, what do I mean by this? Well, Bitcoin had a pump and then it had a high, then a dip, and then a high. Now, this high is not as high as the previous high, which means that Bitcoin is having a lower high and a lower low, which basically means that every low is lower than the previous low and every high is lower than the previous high, or that we are currently in a bullish market right now. Depending on what happens in the next couple of days, will depend if we are doing one of two things. So the first system we can be doing is we're in a range. What do I mean by this? Well, this gold ratio, you can see Bitcoin love bouncing off this gold ratio. So one thing we can consider is that if it drops to the golden ratio right here and then starts to pump up again, then we are in a range. What that means is that Bitcoin is basically going sideways, trying to build momentum in order to shoot to the upside. Now, if it stays in a range for too long, it can lose momentum actually and fall down. But the second thing that Bitcoin can do is actually set in a lower low. Now, if it sets in that lower low, that is slightly concerning, especially since we have a head and shoulders pattern forming. What does that mean? Well, that means when you have a shoulder here and then it pumps up to a head, goes down to another shoulder. Now, this head and shoulders pattern is not perfectly in line, which means it's not a perfect head and shoulders pattern, but it is resembling a head and shoulders pattern, and that is a very bearish, very bearish move. So that's something we don't really want to see, but it's not a perfect head and shoulders, so it's not quite validated yet. So what have we seen in today's video? We've seen that Bitcoin is at one of the most important moments in this bull run. Why? Because if Bitcoin does not hold this golden ratio and goes farther down and closes and then starts to pump up, then we are having lower low, lower high, meaning we are in a bear market, which is not good for many people. But for me personally, because I keep buying Bitcoin no matter what, and I love when we're in a bearish market because that's when I can buy more Bitcoin, then it's okay for me. But for you who just wants to see the gains, it's not a very good idea. But what is a good idea, like I said earlier, is subscribing. That being said, I will see you guys tomorrow. Adios.